What's up, guys? Martinique here from the AdGrease team. Today I'm gonna share our Google Tag Manager audit template with you guys, so you can make sure your tracking is set up perfectly, just the way it should be. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make myself a bit smaller here. I'm gonna move myself here. Just let me clean this up here for the overview. And today we're gonna walk through this checklist, guys. So what it contains is just a check on how to audit your Google Tag Manager account. So we're gonna see how it's installed, some quick checks on Google Analytics, no real deep dive, but just to see if it's okay. We are gonna dive a bit deeper into Google Ads, a bit on Microsoft and the cookies and the consent. And lastly, make sure you double check everything and you do a test purchase before touching anything, just to make sure that you're on the right track here. And obviously, I'm gonna link the video here, but I'll do so afterwards. So let me zoom in so you guys can see this a bit better. Okay, so first off, we're gonna start on how to check if Google Tag Manager is installed properly. It kind of says it here, but you need two scripts and you need them both. Although it doesn't break down if you don't have the second script, but just make sure the one in the head is most important. It should appear only once, no duplicates. Really easy to mess up. Something I've seen happen lots of times. Just make sure that it's placed in the right location. You can check this within Google Tag Manager yourself. Was a plugin installed? If so, which one? Some of them are really nice, like GTM for WP, for example, for WordPress. There are some nice ones. If one is used, just make sure it has good reviews, and it's a pleasure to work with. And just make sure it's used for all measurement purposes. So Google Ads, GA4, Microsoft Ads, the consent mode, and all other scripts and tags should be installed through Google Tag Manager as well, just to keep a clear overview and making sure that everything is on the right place, in the same place. Is a Datalayer implemented? Datalayer is a piece of JavaScript that you can read with Google Tag Manager to capture values. For example, share revenue numbers with Google Ads. So I wrote this document. It has like the most important e-commerce events, and then you can also see what it should look like. And you can hand this over to your developer so he can fix it if needed, of course. There's also a Google resource in here, which is also pretty useful. Not gonna go through it all the way right now, but it is some useful stuff, and you can see how every event should be created, and there are some examples in here as well. So in Google Tag Manager, you have lots of pre-built variables that you can turn on, basically. This is just a matter of actually clicking them and turning them on. You can find this in the variables part in Google Tag Manager. You can just click all the different ones like page URL, click URL, etc. So only at that point you can see them in the preview mode and you can use them and you can test with them. For the triggers, and I also did this for the variables, this is kind of about the same thing. And this also comes back below in the document. Just make sure that everything is tested. And if there is anything there that shouldn't be there, just remove it and ensure that some things are only fired under certain conditions. This is just something that should be tested. And the naming conventions. When something goes wrong here, it's probably due to the naming conventions that are just nonsense or very unclear. Just name your triggers and variables in a logical manner. For example, a certain event or a certain source that you're using it for example, GA4 event purchase, for example, that could be a certain variable. Although I would then probably just use a trigger for a purchase event and link that to the GA4 tag, to the purchase tag. Nearly all Google Tag Manager containers have custom HTML tags. Some of them can also be replaced by tag templates. For example, I see this a lot with the meta tags. Some use a custom HTML tag, some use the Facebook tag, I believe it's called. Just make sure that you use the right one and check it, because mistakes are easily made with custom HTML coding. Also check if everything is used. If you really want to conduct a proper audit, you should test if everything is in use. If not, pause it, remove it, or change the naming convention, for example, with an X included or a Z, so you know that it can be removed. That's here for the tag inventory and the cleanup. Huge containers can get really messy quickly. Just make sure that it's clean and proper. Server-side tracking. I'll also have other resources for this. If it's set up, you'll recognize it by a server container in Google Tag Manager, although certain plug-and-play tools could also be utilized. If it's there, nice. Then you can debug that as well. So I'm going to move on to a few minor things about GA4. I have separate resources on GA4 as well. I didn't want to make this like a GA4 focused resource. I did want to keep it more relevant for Google Ads. But you should have the GA4 tag, obviously, and it should also be in Google Tag Manager. Lots of people place it with scripts or maybe even hard-coded on the side. If you use Google Tag Manager, make sure everything is in there. It like really gives you a clean overview. If you're in the e-commerce space, check if all the e-commerce events are there and if they're firing, and also if they contain the right data. A little bit more on that later in the testing part. You might have other important events as well, like form fills, for example, or certain button clicks or whatever. Maybe even a certain visibility trigger. Just ensure you know that what you want to measure, that's actually measured. I didn't want to create like a template for a whole measurement plan here. I just wanted to keep this focused on Google Tag Manager only. And also ensure that you have your audiences and that they're created and also shared with Google Ads. This is kind of separate actually for Google Analytics. And you might also have referral exclusions. I added this here because there is a way to do this in Google Tag Manager, super easy. I should probably link that here. And this is about if your channel referral in GA4 has certain payment providers like Molly, Ideal, certain credit card providers, maybe certain banks. If so, you want to set them as referral exclusions, but I might not do this manually because it's like a process that needs updating regularly. Easier to do this in a tag in Google Tag Manager. Then moving on to the Google Ads part and how you can check if your Google Tag Manager container is set up properly for Google Ads. This is also explained in my audit template. So I just copy pasted the Google Ads part and added a few small things here. Ensure you have your Google Ads tags. This speaks for itself. I'm not going to go all the way in depth here. Ensure that in Google Ads you have the right conversion actions set as primary and that you measure the correct values. Always test this and also verify if enhanced conversions is actually sent up properly. So about the sending of hashed user data to Google Ads, and also ensure you turned it on in Google Ads itself, because that should be done separately besides the technical setup in Google Tag Manager. Key with this, just do a test purchase and then you'll see if it fires correctly and if your email address is passed on. Is your transaction ID filled in? This should be with a Datalayer variable. You should just check the tag and see if it's there, but you should debug it. And you can also decide if you need new client data or card data. That's kind of for the advanced stuff, is not really necessary for the basic setup. Add your GA4 conversions as secondary in your Google Ads account. I combined a few of the Google Ads and Google Tag Manager things here. because your GA4 conversions should be measured in Google Tag Manager, but in Google Ads, you should import it as a conversion as well. And then also set it to data-driven attribution. And within Google Ads, make sure you have the right conversion window settings. The default is 90 days for GA4 and 30 days for the Google Ads tag. You can keep it on default. You can also see what would be relevant for you to use. And then check if everything is working. And if your remarketing tag is set up, preferably through Google Tag Manager again, and also if you're in the e-commerce space or travel space or a certain space that allows for dynamic remarketing, I have this resource for you on how to set it up. I'm not going to go in depth about it because I have a separate video on this as well. This just shows you how to set up your dynamic remarketing for Google Ads using Google Tag Manager. And then also decide on if those parameters are right. Again, that's in the video. I'm going to link that here as well. Also decide if you use offline conversion tracking in Google Ads, and just make sure that you understand that logic. This can be besides of or outside of Google Tag Manager, but the basics is that you should understand what happens and how this is set up and how it matches certain data points to each other. And check if the conversion linker is implemented and is firing. That's like a first-party cookie that captures your Google Click ID and then basically allows for conversion tracking to work. Some set up Microsoft Ads with Google Tag Manager. I like that. Then you have all your tags in one place. There are no really specific things I would want to deep dive in. This is just make sure that the UAT tag, that's what they call it at Microsoft, is used and that it's set up with Google Tag Manager and that it fires. Just do a test purchase and check if Microsoft Ads conversions are installed with Google Tag Manager, because these days it's really easy to set up a conversion in Google Ads or Microsoft Ads manually, but just ensure that it's done with Google Tag Manager. It really allows for easy debugging. I've never heard anybody complain on that it's all set up with Google Tag Manager because it's just super easy and friendly to use. Your consent should also be handled in Google Tag Manager. So that means that you should have consent mode v2. Obviously, you can see if this works in Google Ads. Also check if the cookie banner is functional. So if cookies are firing when consent was given and without consent, these two are kind of combined here. So just ensure that they don't fire when there's no consent, and if they fire if there's consent. If that's important to you, for example, if you're in the European region, this is something that you want to have because it's mandatory. In other countries, other laws might apply. And ensure that you don't use all pages tag, but use a consent initialization trigger. And that basically means that it fires once consent is given. Within certain tags, you can add consent manually. So you can say, hey, I only want this tag to fire when, for example, ad storage was granted. So I had the cookies related to advertising. There goes the ad in ad storage. This goes automatically for the Google tags, so the GA4 tags, the conversion tags, and the remarketing tags, but not for other tags like custom HTML tags or meta tags or Microsoft tags. So that needs to be done manually if you want to respect consent. Just use the ZMP. If you're unfamiliar with some of the wording I just used, a tool like Cookiebot can basically do this for you. They have like really friendly setup and are very nice to work with. So when all of this comes together, and I should tell you one thing to take away from this is that you should always do a test purchase. Always. Things break down. Things might not work the way they used to be. Someone may have messed with your Google Tag Manager container. Preview mode will help you. Just do a test purchase and you can debug exactly what happens and find any errors with specific events or tags or data layers or whatever. If you do so, ensure to test all events that you want to measure. Don't skip some of them. Don't take the easy way out. because it's really important that everything is measured correctly. Yeah, so this is mainly for Google Ads. Double, triple check your conversion ID and label, especially if it's a Google Tag Manager container that you haven't created. Just ensure that the right data is passed on. So the right Google measurement IDs, conversion IDs, labels, everything that should be double checked. And again, also for the value and currency, something that's pretty easy to spot when it's off, but also sometimes overlooked. That should all be set perfectly. Otherwise, your values will be incorrect. And again, test with and without consent. That kind of speaks for itself. And there might be some elements that I've missed here. For example, if you have like a very specific use case or specific tag that you might not know what it means, just test it, see how it fires, see how it behaves. And then that should really give you a good audit of a Google Tag Manager container. So I just ensure that all the data is measured correctly. I hope you can use this as like a checklist. I like to use this as a checklist. So you can just, for example, make this visible. And then when you're working in this, you can say, hey, I did this. For example, set this to done. And then you can work from that point on. And it gives you like a really good overview of how to structure your Google Tag Manager container. And something that you can just maybe even do periodically if it's like a container that's actively managed. So thanks guys. Thanks for your attention. I really hope you found this helpful. Feel free to make a copy here. So you can make a copy here, your own copy. And then you can use this for yourself. Subscribe to the newsletter, linked below, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, because this will be updated every once in a while, and then I'll post about it. If you need anything with regards to Google Ads, we at AdGrease senior specialists, only people with 5+ years of experience. See you guys. Thank you. Bye bye.